Some words stay with you forever. The very kind ones, and the very harsh ones. The patients of the famous Dr. Mason James would remember his words for a lifetime. Harsh, blunt, heartless. "I can tell your age just by looking at your illness," he said, his voice firm. "I'm Dr. Mason James. Your pride may be big, but my experience is bigger. Your body is worn out. I can't help you anymore. Don't waste your money. Your parents are old. 60 is long enough to live. And don't tell me how to do my job. I've never made a wrong diagnosis." That was Dr. Mason James. Confident, cold, sometimes cruel. Some people earn their success through struggle. Others get it too easily, and they forget its value. Now in his 50s, Dr. Mason lived with his wife and 2 children. He often said, a person should be realistic, painfully realistic. At his clinic in Chicago, the waiting room was always full. Maybe that's why he thought so highly of himself, but rigidity often breaks the hardest people. To their faces, patients respected him. Behind his back, they cursed him. "Hi." A soft female voice pulled him from his thoughts. He looked up. A young woman walked in, graceful, confident, beautiful. Her hazel eyes sparkled, calm, serene. She wore a simple pink top, white pants, a light scarf over her shoulders. Dr. Mason straightened, offering his professional smile. She handed him a folder. "These are my reports. All tests are done." He opened the file, read her name. "Miss Zoey Nelson," he said, pausing. "I won't give you false hope. I'm practical. My job is to tell my patients the truth, even when it hurts." Dr. Mason hesitated for a moment before speaking. He placed the file on the desk and looked at her. "Your cancer is in its final stage," he said flatly. "You have only a few days left to live." Zoe's eyes widened, but she said nothing. "You should go," he continued coldly. "Make peace with the people you've hurt. There's no point wasting money on treatment. Instead, give it to charity. At least someone might benefit. Medicine can't help you now." She stayed calm, even smiled faintly, as if she had expected it. Her peaceful expression unsettled him. Most people broke down in tears, but not her. For a moment, he wondered if she might be delusional. "This shouldn't happen to someone like you," he said, his tone softening despite himself. "You're not doubting the reports, are you?" "Why would I?" Zoe leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the desk. Her voice was calm but firm. "Doctor," she said with a faint smile, "maybe it's hard for you to hear, but the truth is," she paused, eyes locked on his, "you're the one dying." He frowned, caught off guard. "You may not have the same report in your hand," she continued softly, "but your time will come too." Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Every soul will taste death. You look at people like me with pity, but what about yourself? You walk around with your own invisible death certificate, pretending it isn't there." Her eyes shimmered, a tear forming, but she quickly blinked it away. "We at least get the warning," she whispered. "We have time to make peace before we go, but people like you, proud, heartless, too busy playing God," her tone deepened, "you don't even see it coming. And when death finally comes," she paused, "it devours you whole." Zoe took a slow breath, picked up her purse, and stood. Her voice was calm, but her words lingered in the air, like a haunting echo. Zoe's voice lingered in the air, like a final verdict. "Next time you speak to someone like me, doctor, think twice," she said quietly, "because the death you ignore might be the one that finally puts you to sleep." Her hand touched the door handle, but she turned back for one last look. "And maybe it'll come even before mine, Dr. Mason James." With that, she pulled the door shut behind her, hard. For the first time in his career, Mason's face went pale. He stood frozen, staring at the closed door, mouth half open. He had expected tears, pleading, desperation, but instead, her calm words had shattered his arrogance, breaking the wall of pride he'd built around himself for years. He just sat there, watching her walk away, feeling a strange hollowness where his confidence used to be. A few months later, "Your life is a miracle," said the woman on stage. Her voice was powerful, filled with grace. "Did you know that? A miracle." The audience, hundreds of people, watched her in awe. It was Zoey Nelson, now a well-known motivational speaker. She stood at the podium, glowing under the lights. Cameras flashed, but she remained calm, her smile steady. "You might not believe this," she said, tapping her forehead lightly. "Your eyes, they start forming right here, and then they divide, one for each side. Isn't that amazing?" The crowd listened silently, captivated. "When I first learned this," Zoey continued, "I reacted the same way you just did. Total disbelief." She paused, scanning the room. Her beauty was undeniable, but her real power came from the quiet strength in her voice. Only she knew that behind that strength lived something dark, an illness eating away at her body. "Have you ever seen a child with one eye?" she asked suddenly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Probably not," she said. But on March 17, 2023, a woman in Yemen gave birth to one. Doctors said it was due to radiation and pollution, after years of bombing. But that's not the only reason. The hall was silent. You could hear the faint rustle of people shifting in their seats. "Sometimes," Zoey said softly, "our bodies just stop growing. Something inside us refuses to continue. And that's when a child is born with one eye. Science calls it a mutation. I call it a message." Every word hung heavy in the air. The audience wasn't just listening. They were feeling every beat of her story. Zoey paused on stage, her eyes sweeping over the silent crowd. "You might be wondering," she said softly, "why I started talking about eyes. Why I brought up something so strange." She took a deep breath and stepped forward, standing at the center of the spotlight. "Because your life itself is a miracle. Think about it. The fact that one tiny spot on your forehead divided into two perfect eyes, each fitted into its own place with matching color. That's a miracle. The fact that your heart, your organs, your lungs formed perfectly, and that you can breathe in this world right now. That's a miracle." The audience listened, completely still. "Now imagine," she continued, "if one of your eyes refused to divide into two, or your body didn't form the way it should. What could you have done? Nothing. That's why every breath you take, every moment you're alive, is a miracle." Her tone grew more emotional. "But what do? We fail one exam and lose hope. We don't get the job we want, and we think life is unfair. We don't find love, or we can't have children, or our health fades, and we call ourselves unlucky." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "You forget that the same creator who shaped your body from nothing can also shape your future. Stop building castles of impossible dreams. That's where disappointment begins. The one who could create your eyes can also bring color back to your life." She smiled gently. "Leave it to him." That's where the miracles begin. See you all in the next session. God bless. The hall filled with applause as Zoey stepped off the stage, her calm smile hiding the fatigue beneath. "Wow," came a playful voice behind her as she reached her car. "You really outdid yourself today." Zoey stopped, turning with a grin. She opened the car door and waved her friend inside. "Don't start again, Maya," she said, laughing as the young woman with long silky hair slipped into the passenger's seat. Maya smirked. "Hey, I didn't want to interrupt your moment. You were on fire up there." Zoey glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror, the scarf framing her face, her soft hazel eyes glowing under the concealer hiding the dark circles. Still, Zoe said, her tone turning mock serious. You could have said hi after the session instead of hiding in the back like a stalker. Maya chuckled. I didn't want to break your focus, Professor Miracle. Zoe rolled her eyes, laughing. Okay, enough of the sarcasm. Seriously, stop with the memes. You sound ridiculous when you say them. Maya only smiled mischievously, saying nothing. Okay, Maya said suddenly, turning to her. So, what did the doctor say about your reports? Zoe's hands froze on the steering wheel. Her grip loosened for a second before she quickly tightened it again. She shifted gears, forcing a calm tone. You didn't tell me, Maya repeated softly. The car moved steadily down the quiet road. Outside, the wind shook the trees, and the street was nearly empty. Just a few people walking on the sidewalk as the car climbed a small hill. Zoe blinked, startled by the sound of her name. Huh? Did you say something? I asked what the doctor said yesterday, Maya said, watching her closely. Zoe kept her eyes on the road. He said, she paused, her voice dry. He said I should start preparing for my death certificate. Maya's jaw dropped. What? Zoe gave a small, bitter laugh, slowing the car and pulling it to the side of the road. What do you think I did? Cry? Beg him to save me? She laughed again hollowly. No. I just smiled. It confused him more than anything. Maya's face darkened. You should have smacked that jerk across the face. Who says something like that to a patient? Zoe shook her head, taking a deep breath. He's not a jerk. He's actually one of the country's top doctors, Dr. Mason James. He's confident, maybe too confident. As she spoke, the entire scene replayed in her mind, walking into his clinic with trembling hands, his cold words, his unshakable arrogance, and her own calm defiance in response. That Dr. James? Maya asked. The one who thinks he's God's gift to medicine? Of course he'd say something like that, but come on, Zoe. What did the reports really say? Zoe looked at her friend, hesitant. The wind outside had grown stronger, rustling through the trees as though nature itself was listening. She sighed, moistening her lips. How could she tell Maya the truth? That the disease was spreading faster than ever, that her time was truly running out. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a sharp tap-tap-tap hit the car window. Both women turned sharply. A man was leaning toward Zoe's window, knocking insistently with his finger. Ma'am, this isn't a parking spot, a man called sharply, as Zoe rolled down the window. You're blocking the road and chatting. Look behind you. Zoe glanced back. Several cars were stuck behind her, including a truck in the middle of the lane. The man's frustration was clear as he bit his lip. People are getting delayed because of you, he continued, and you don't even care, sitting there like it's your private road. Mister, watch your tone, Maya muttered. Shazah, Zoe hissed at her friend. Sorry, it's our mistake. Let's just go. She patted Maya and quickly shifted gears, accelerating as the cars behind her started moving again. You shouldn't have made me shut up. Didn't you see how rude he was? Maya exclaimed, her mouth wide open. Zoe shook her head, laughing softly. It's fine, just drive, don't argue. Meanwhile, in a pristine white laboratory, a soft glow filled the room. Scientists in white coats moved quickly and carefully around tables crowded with microscopes, flasks, and glass cabinets. Every movement spoke of precision and urgency. Doctor, I've collected the man's cell samples. Now we need to call the woman for hers, said a female doctor in a low, serious tone. Another scientist responded quietly. She came today, but I don't know why she didn't come for this procedure. Maybe she was hesitant. Dr. James, the woman said, hand her over to me. I'll explain it myself. She shouldn't feel ashamed. Dr. James nodded briefly, then moved to another corner, clearly in a hurry. The dim white light of the lab created an air of mystery, despite its clinical cleanliness. There was purpose here, but also a secret being quietly carried out. Something important, something urgent. And the women and men in lab coats were the only ones who knew. "Do you know why we're still together?" Zoey asked quietly, lying back on the couch. She didn't look at Maya, just let her gaze drift to the moonlight spilling through the window. Maya stayed silent. "Because we have so much in common," Zoey whispered. "You have no one in this crowded world, and neither do I. And I'm going to die anyway." Her voice trembled, barely audible in the quiet of the night. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Maya hadn't gone home, staying by Zoey's side. The room was dark except for the pale moonlight. "So, should I assume," Maya said softly, "that the motivational speaker Zoey Nelson, the one who lifts everyone out of despair, is herself a victim of disappointment?" Moments passed in silence. "Zoey, are you okay?" Maya pressed, worried. Zoey turned slightly toward her friend, then back to the moon. "I can't tell you. Some people are meant to come into our lives and then leave. Every soul comes into the world to go. If I leave, don't cry for me." "Zoey, it hurts," she admitted, her voice breaking, "to watch illness take over your body day by day. To feel your strength slipping away. People think I have it all, beauty, fame, success, but they don't know what I hide inside." Maya reached out, but Zoey shook her head. "Everyone chases beauty these days," she said bitterly. "No one sees what's inside. I wish I were ugly, but healthy. Can you cure my cancer, Maya? I can't bear this pain anymore, pretending to be strong every day." Maya's voice hardened. "If you keep talking like this, I'm going home." "Oh, no, wait," Zoey said, smiling weakly. "You know I'm writing a book, Sam al-Khayyat." "What's that?" Maya asked, turning back. "I'll tell you in the next session," Zoey whispered, her eyes flickering with both hope and despair. "You're an example, Zoey," Maya said softly. "A beacon of hope. But the truth is, you only light that lamp in front of others. Alone, there's darkness inside you too. I want to see that darkness turn into light. I want to see you truly hopeful and confident." Zoey switched on a small lamp. Its warm glow fell on her face, and Maya saw it. The fragile line between hope and despair, flickering in her friend's eyes. The hospital was crowded as usual. People waited impatiently outside rooms, murmuring quietly. Inside, the man in the room next door was the center of attention, Dr. Mason James, whose nameplate gleamed on the door. There were only 45 minutes left before his shift ended, but something was about to happen that shouldn't have. "What are you doing here?" Mason's voice was sharp, tinged with disbelief. The woman standing in front of him said nothing. Her silence only tightened his nerves. He studied her carefully, and suddenly, his loose composure snapped. "Tell me, what are you doing here?" His voice carried a teasing edge, one he never expected to use with his wife. She didn't flinch. To calm himself, Mason uncapped the glass of water before him and drained it in 3 long sips. "You should go home. This isn't Mir Abed's room," he said sternly. "There's no need to make a scene in front of my patients." "All I want to know," she said firmly, "is why that woman came home." "She came home. So why are you questioning me here?" "You could have asked at home too," he replied, his heart secretly longing to reach out, to take her hand and guide her out of the chaos. "Don't get clever with me, Mason James. I have the right to ask," she snapped, her agitation growing with each second. Dressed in a simple black cloak, no one would have recognized her as Mrs. Mason James. Mason inhaled the scent of essential oil, trying to steady himself. At least his wife cared enough to confront him. Outside, the patients waited patiently, and the ticking clock reminded him of every passing minute. "She was my patient," he finally said, his voice steady, as if saying it aloud saved him. "Really? What kind of special patient could only be treated at home?" she asked, her tone sharp, mocking. "I'm telling you again, leave. Don't test my patience." He chewed each word deliberately and signaled his assistant to call in another patient. "You are committing a sin, Mason James," she said, raising her finger. "And I won't support you in this at all. Close your lab at the first opportunity, or you'll be fully responsible for whatever happens." Before Mason could respond, a patient entered the room, forcing her to step aside. The session hall was packed to the brim. This time the event was held outdoors on a sprawling lawn, and the crowd kept streaming in without pause. Today, a special announcement had been made. Zoey Nelson herself would speak, and her fans were running to hear their favorite motivational speaker. It was still an hour before the session was scheduled to start, yet the energy in the air made it feel as though the waiting was part of the excitement. Under the open sky, surrounded by glowing artificial lights, the atmosphere was alive, vibrant, and electric. Finally, the young announcer stepped onto the stage and proclaimed Zoey's arrival. It was as if someone had breathed new life into the crowd. The audience erupted, excitement crackling in the air. Zoey had a way with words, a magician who captivated everyone present. But when she appeared, there was an uneasy silence. This was not the Zoey they expected. Her once fresh face showed weariness. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, though the familiar, eternal smile still graced her lips. When she raised her hand in greeting, the audience smiled reflexively, though tension hung over the crowd. She had arrived without the usual support, with nothing artificial to enhance her presence. Raw, simple, and real. "In the name of the most gracious, the most merciful," she began. "Surely we are all created in the best of forms. No one is black or white, tall or short, fat or thin, ugly or perfect. We are all human. Each of us is beautiful. No matter our background, our shape, or our story, we are perfect as we are. This is unchangeable. This is truth." Her words floated over the crowd, cutting through the surprise and awe in their eyes. She spoke with calm authority, unbothered by the whispers around her. Meanwhile, in a small yet elegant house, refinement and sophistication were evident in every corner. On the sofa's coffee table, a handmade cloth stretched across the surface, decorated with 3 little ducks seemingly poised to swim in a row. At the center of this home scene, Dr. Mason James sat with a remote in hand, neck craned to the right, eyes glued to the television. Beside him, a 7-year-old child was deeply engrossed in a book. Around them, 3 younger children, ages 2, 5, and 3, played noisily with scattered toys, filling the house with chaotic energy. One person was missing from this picture of domestic life: Mrs. Mason James, the talented woman who had crafted the intricate tablecloth and brought beauty to the home. After a few moments, a tall, gentle-looking woman approached the sofa, smiling warmly. The younger children ran to greet her, but the child on the sofa, much like his father, simply turned his head and observed quietly before returning to his own activities. "Studying hard, Prince?" she asked affectionately, sitting on the floor beside the younger kids. "I'm just going over the test I barely remember." "You should prepare too," he replied, his words tinged with excitement. Dr. Mason James raised his eyebrows, surprised at his son's focus, not on his mother or the younger siblings, but on the motivational speaker on TV. Seeing her reminded him, for reasons he didn't want to admit, of his beautiful patient, Zoey Nelson. "What?" he muttered under his breath. "I'm preparing you for my inevitable failure," Mrs. James said lightly, her eyes twinkling, "so that you don't get too shocked later." "Prepare me for what?" Mason asked, still puzzled. "The subject is, the taste of death is the taste of life," she said simply, smiling as though speaking of something ordinary. "Don't give me that look." "Come on, let me explain," she said, gesturing toward the television. "Our new generation must have heard of Dolly," she began, and many hands in the room shot up, though she simply smiled. In science classes, especially for medical students, we're taught about test tubes and cloning. The example they give is a sheep named Dolly, showing a successful scientific experiment. Just as scientists created Dolly, humans can theoretically now be created in a lab. But there's something crucial they forget. In their attempt to tamper with Allah's natural laws, the scientists ended up creating a sheep that aged abnormally fast. I can't say they truly created life, because creation belongs only to Allah. In 1997, Dolly was born using cells from a female sheep of one breed and a male of another, then placed in the womb of a surrogate black-faced sheep. She was born naturally, but her story is remarkable. She aged quickly, showing that science cannot replace the divine order of life. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Do you know what the most fascinating part of this story is?" she asked, smiling, as all eyes turned toward her, rapt and astonished at her insight and delivery. "The most fascinating part of Dolly's story," Zoey continued, her voice steady but tinged with awe, "is something our textbooks never mention. The female sheep from which Dolly's cell was taken was 6 years old. When Dolly was born, she looked like a normal newborn, but the scientists were in for a shock. She began aging prematurely. Her real mother kept getting older, and Dolly's body followed suit. Her skin sagged as her mother's did. These scientists had created her through an experiment, but they couldn't reverse her age. They couldn't make her young again. Do you understand? If Allah had willed, Dolly would not have aged in the body of another sheep. But nature had its own laws, a warning to humans that they cannot compete with it. Life cannot be manufactured. It is a divine gift." The hall erupted in applause. Zoey raised her hand to quiet them. "When a human being is formed," she continued, her voice now soft but firm, "the age of the child starts the moment life begins, no matter the mother's age, 16 or 40. Allah gives everything anew. Humans are being treated like dolls now, but life is sacred. This is a truth we must respect, and manipulating it is nothing short of sin." Her words softened even more as she spoke of herself. "I am Zoey, who lost her parents as a child, whose indifferent relatives left her homeless. Yet, through Allah's grace and the beauty He gave me, people opened their homes to me, and here I am today." Her voice faltered slightly, as though the weight of her past was pressing on her chest. Meanwhile, Dr. Mason James sat frozen before the TV. The words, the memories, the resemblance to his patient, it all hit him at once. His heart ached. Without thinking, he stood, turned off the TV, and stepped outside. Everyone in the room watched in stunned silence. Masood James, a man who had always held his heart tightly, had been defeated today by a young woman he never intended to care for, yet could not ignore. He had barely stepped outside when the phone rang. "Speak," he barked into the receiver. "Doctor, we've collected the mother cells and mixed them with the donor cells. Now we need to implant them into her body. You told us she came to your house, but you didn't specify when the procedure should happen." "Don't bother me," Mason snapped, slamming the phone down. Zoey Nelson stood before the crowd, her voice calm yet heavy with meaning. "I, Zoey Nelson, who left my benefactor's house at 16 to build my own identity. Never knew that the scholarship I thought I earned on merit was another act of kindness from my benefactor. A gentle, bittersweet smile crossed her face. Simple, sincere, beautiful. Today, after becoming one of the country's most recognized motivational speakers, I stand here with countless admirers. But I, Zoey, am battling a type of cancer that cannot be cured. Even my benefactors can do nothing to save me now. Her gaze drifted toward a middle-aged man sitting in the audience. The crowd instinctively followed her eyes. She dabbed away the moisture forming at the corners of her lashes. I want you all to learn something from me. Beauty isn't everything. Look at me. My eyes ringed with jewels, my face admired by many. I have respect, fame, success, and praise. Yet I suffer inside. Each day, I feel my body changing, fading. Still, I remind myself, our lives, our health, our deaths, our futures, none of it belongs to us. All of it is in God's hands. The crowd listened in complete silence. Who knows? Maybe someone sitting here tonight won't live to see tomorrow's sunrise. Maybe someone the doctors have given up on will live many more years. Despair is disbelief. Always believe that your life is in God's hands. When He gives us life, He already knows when it will end. None of us do. Her voice trembled now. I've come to you today as my true self. No mask, no makeup. I don't know if I'll live to see another day. That's why I wanted to speak to you while I still can. The crowd grew emotional. Zoey took a deep breath. Now, I'd like to invite my benefactor to the stage. Please stand and welcome him. Dr. Mason James's father, my greatest supporter, Mr. Jonathan Dawes. The audience rose to their feet as thunderous applause filled the hall. On stage, Zoey's tearful eyes shimmered under the lights, like a gazelle caught between sorrow and gratitude. Today I've shared my greatest sorrow with you, she continued, but also my greatest joy. Very soon, my new book will be in your hands. Its title is Sam al-Khayat, The Eye of the Needle. If God wills, He can pass a camel through the eye of a needle, for He can do all things. My only wish before I die is to complete this book. Moments later, Shaza ran onto the stage and wrapped her arms around Zoey. The crowd stood again, not in pity but in admiration. Every look turned toward her was filled with respect and awe. Outside, the night air was cold. A car engine roared to life. They pulled out of the garage, Zoey's voice still echoing in their minds. Every soul shall taste death. Every soul shall taste death. The car sped through the empty streets, faster and faster. Their breath quickened, sweat trickled down their forehead, their heart pounded wildly, as if it refused to stop. The traffic light flashed red. They didn't slow down. The sirens wailed behind them, police chasing, lights blinding. But all they could hear was Zoey's voice calling their name, over and over. The orders to stop the car rang endlessly in the background, like relentless hammer strikes on their minds. A police cruiser turned onto the street behind them, then cut in front to block the way. The sirens wailed without pause. His hands began to tremble, and the steering wheel slipped from his grasp. In a panic, he opened the car door and bolted. 2 police vans had already stopped nearby. The vehicle, now uncontrolled, crashed into a pool of water. 2 officers chased him on foot, breath ragged. A gunshot shattered the night. He had given up. Running was no longer an option. The policeman closed in, and he fell face first onto the ground. Blood spread across the pavement, rising and falling with each movement. The deadly game of cat and mouse was over. Dr. Mason James, who had ignored all warnings until now, would not evade justice today. The officers lifted him and placed him into the van, speeding toward the hospital. The chaos that had erupted earlier had finally come to an end. A police officer pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, ma'am? As you requested, your husband was apprehended, but he has been injured. I need to—" Before he could finish, another officer ran up, gasping for air, and whispered something urgently in his ear. He nodded and quickly moved on. The line crackled. "Hello, are you still there?" A faint voice replied, "Sorry, he has died." Perhaps the phone slipped from the other end. All that remained was the wail of a passing police cruiser fading into the distance. A chapter of life had come to a sudden, tragic end.